I want to talk about learning Chinese and how I learned Chinese. And the point I want to stress here is that, in a way, the method does not matter if you get everything else right. So I'll explain more what that means in a moment. But before we get into that, there is more than one Chinese. For example, I just got this dictionary from my friend Selena from China. This is a dictionary for Teochew, which is a Chinese language, 潮州话 in Mandarin. But you can see they got all the characters and they have the Mandarin and the Teochew. The only problem I have with this dictionary is that they ordered it by radical and stroke order instead of by the Roman alphabet. So if you want to look up a word, you have to count how many strokes the character has, and you have to figure out the radical in the character and then find it in here in the right order. So that's a bit annoying, but yeah, I'm so happy I got this book because you cannot get this in America. This book you can only find in China. Really, the only place you can find resources for Teochew is China. So very happy for this. Thank you, Selena. I really appreciate you getting this book for me and shipping it. It's not a small book either. So when I first began to learn Chinese, it actually was a long time ago. I had learned Japanese first, actually, and I had studied Japanese in college, if you've been following my story. But when I got back from Japan and I came to America, I was very interested in learning Mandarin Chinese because I always wanted to learn Chinese. Ever since I met my friend Jimmy Yang at my high school, who invited me to go to Taiwan to stay with his family for 1 month after we graduated from high school. And that was just such a great experience that I wanted to learn more Chinese. So when I got back from Japan in my early 20s, I decided I would try to take a class at Villanova University, which is a university nearby. They had a summer class. But I went a few times and I had a problem with this class because, for one thing, the professor seemed more interested in telling stories in English about his experiences in America, which, don't get me wrong, they were very interesting stories from his Chinese perspective, but I was there to learn Mandarin Chinese. The other thing was that the other students in the class were all like sports players who were just trying to figure out how to fulfill their language requirements. I think it was because they didn't want to take a language class during the school year so that they could practice more. So they ended up taking a language class during the summer. But it was clear they didn't care because they were just going to take it for however many credits they needed to get the requirement done and then drop it. So I eventually left that class disheartened because it wasn't really the way. Later on, I got an internship at Penn's School of Business, the Wharton School of Business here in Philadelphia. And I was able to talk my way into the beginning level Chinese class because I said I was a part of Penn. I was part of the University of Pennsylvania because I worked at Wharton. And the professor was nice enough to say, okay. So I actually ended up going to this class a little bit longer because the students were more serious and it was a better class. However, I just couldn't stay with it because we spent so much time on testing, especially testing things that I did not care about. For example, we would have weekly tests about how to write the Chinese characters. And for me personally, I don't write the Japanese or Chinese characters. And if I have to write them, then I'm just going to type them on my phone. And then I can draw them while looking at my phone. But 99% of the time, 99.9% of the time, I'm just typing on my computer. So I don't need to be able to write it by hand. You just need to be able to know the proper stroke order. That way you can look on your phone for the characters and draw it that way. Anyway, I got fed up with the testing, so I left that class maybe, I don't know, I want to say a month in. But the interesting thing was an old college friend from my college at Middlebury College, my friend Holly, came to Philadelphia to stay with me for a week. And she is Chinese, and while she stayed with me, she was saying stuff like, oh, you took the wrong language in college, you took Japanese, you should have taken Mandarin Chinese. It would have been so great if you knew Mandarin Chinese now. But in my head, I was like, yo, I can still learn Mandarin Chinese. So after she left, I used the chat app WeChat, which is the most popular chat app in China. It's not a dating app, it's just a regular chatting application, kind of like WhatsApp or the texting on your phone. And the great thing about WeChat is they have this function that if you turn it on, you can see all the people nearby, and it tells you how far away they are from you and allows you to message them. You have to turn it on, of course, but if you turn it on, you're able to get messages from people nearby. So I live in Fishtown, and Chinatown is not that far away. It's like a couple neighborhoods over. So I turned on this function one night, and I just started messaging all these Chinese people who had WeChat and who had the feature on. And so I ended up talking to a lot of people in Chinatown. And there's one girl in particular I started to talk to named Kelly. Now, Kelly did not really know any English. And I didn't really know any Chinese. So, but I wanted to speak with Kelly. So what I did was we were texting to each other. I already knew Japanese, so I could kind of guess the meanings of the characters, the Chinese characters, I mean. So what I would do is I would copy her message in Chinese into Google Translate. And then I would make an Anki flashcard with the front side being her message in Chinese, and then the back side being the pinyin, or the transliteration of the characters, and the meaning in English. And that's basically how I learned Chinese. I had like thousands of Anki flashcards from my conversations with Kelly. And yeah, that's how I learned Chinese. I was able to read very well after that. And I was able to start practicing speaking as well when I started to meet her in person. Those first meetings were pretty interesting, I must say, because I couldn't really speak Mandarin. She couldn't really speak English, but somehow I made it work. So yeah, that's how I learned Chinese. And that's why I said earlier in the video, it kind of doesn't matter what your method is if you have the incentives in place and lined up correctly. For example, in my case, my incentives were I want to talk with Kelly. And in order to talk with Kelly, I needed to learn Chinese. I needed to be able to understand Chinese. So that allowed me to put the effort in to look at the characters, put them into Anki, review the flashcards every day. That way I could learn more and more and more and understand more and more and be able to start making my own sentences eventually. So yeah, I think the problem is a lot of people, they're always searching for the best method, or maybe the best book is right around the corner. Or maybe they're looking for the next video that's going to tell them how to study the language or Chinese the best. Or maybe they're looking for that forum post online that talks about how someone else studied Chinese in like 1 month, or something like this. But the truth is, even the best method will not work for you unless you have the incentives in your life in place, which is a very clear reason, a very clear desire for wanting to know that language and to bringing it into your life. Because if you can get the desire part correct, then it almost doesn't matter how you're learning the language. You'll find a way, because the desire will propel you to be able to learn the language more and more. Obviously, some techniques will help you learn faster, but the more important thing is the incentives and the desire. So if you can get only one thing right, it doesn't matter what method you use, you'll learn eventually as long as you have the desire in place. So that's what I want to leave you with today. I hope this video was informative and helpful. We'll talk again soon. Thank you so much.